first off, thank you for coming out. I'm so excited that we brought I brought three members of Congress down here to Artesia to understand the oil and gas industry and just what it means not only to this community, to the state, but to the country, how important energy independence will be, and especially the unique challenges that New Mexico faces because of our oil and gas operations on public lands. And so I couldn't have been more excited to have my colleagues join me. We had a great roundtable with several of the stakeholders this morning so we could understand the challenges that are unique to the industry, but how these impacts are going to affect not only the local economies, but the families, the friends, the people in the workforce, and the subsequent suppliers to the operations here. And with that, I want to introduce Congressman Pete Stauber from Minnesota. He has his own set of challenges that are uniquely similar to what we see in New Mexico. But the main purpose of this was to bring colleagues down to get a better idea of how important the energy industry is so that we can get the message out. Well, people will understand what we're facing and why this industry is worth fighting for and why it matters not only to the state, to the nation, but to our energy independence. And with that, I'd like to introduce Congressman Pete Stauber from Minnesota.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and Congresswoman, to invite us down here to see your beautiful state and the beautiful city of Artesia. I think it's important to recognize that New Mexico is part of that energy independence, that energy dominance that we look forward to. As a Congresswoman stated, I'm from northeastern Minnesota, and we're mining industry, and we're not only an iron ore mining industry, but we're critical minerals, and a lot of pushback against mining the critical minerals, just as they are mining oil and gas production down here. And I think it's important that if we want to be energy independent, we have to continue to allow the industry to expand, meeting the environmental and labor standards. And I think that it brings good paying jobs to the community here. It helps with the schools. It brings money to the local communities. And I think that as we go forward, we have to recognize the importance of not only energy independence, but dominating the energy sector. New Mexico is going to be part of that. And just like we want to dominate the mining in northeastern Minnesota and across the nation for that matter. So it's a privilege and pleasure for me to be here with my colleagues and really supporting the oil and gas industry in helping us become energy independent. And so right now I would like to turn it over to my colleague from New York, Claudia Tenney, who joined us today.
Thank you. I just wanted to be here to support Yvette, also to listen and learn about this industry. I come from Central New York. My name is Claudia Tenney, New York's 22nd District. My district is home to some of the richest shale reserves in the nation. We have a moratorium in New York, so we're not allowed to access, in many cases, a lot of that shale. And I just wanted to listen and learn and see how the energy sector affected the economy here. And so we're grateful to Yvette and to my other colleagues, especially Mr. Jackson and Mr. Stauber for coming and joining me as well. And we're grateful for the opportunity to learn, and thank you to Artesia and the wonderful people we met here. They're very proud of their community, and we just are grateful to hear from them and hear their concerns and take them back to Washington. Thank you. And I guess I introduced Ronny Jackson. You all know him.
Thank you, guys. Well, I'm just honored to be here and support the wonderful Congresswoman that you have in this district. She's a real fighter for your state and for what's good for your state. You know, whereas Claudia was just mentioning, she's from a state who has a really poor approach to oil and gas. I happen to be from Texas, where we're doing things right in oil and gas, and it's really interesting to hear the discussions we had today. And I'll just say, you know, I think that it's really important, and this was one of the things we talked about, how people in New Mexico need to know, especially people in urban areas in New Mexico that aren't out here in the rural communities like where we're at now. They need to know how important oil and gas is to their livelihood, to their schools, to their hospitals, to the small businesses that support their everyday way of life. When oil and gas goes away, if we impose just unreasonable taxes and regulations on oil and gas, and we try to drive oil and gas into the ground, which is a big part of what the Biden administration is currently trying to do, it will impact everyone in this state in a very negative way. And so I just think we got to get the word out. Oil and gas, especially in this country, is a very clean way of producing energy. And if we don't produce clean energy via oil and gas here in the United States, we will ultimately be buying oil and gas from overseas again. And I can guarantee you the impact on the climate worldwide will be just multiples of anything that would ever be here, because we do it right here. And so I'm just here as a neighbor across the state line. We have a lot of the same interest, farming, ranching, and oil and gas. I wanted to be here to support my colleague in Congress, who I think is doing a fantastic and wonderful job advocating for the good people of New Mexico. So thank you guys for having me.
Do you guys have a couple of questions before? Sure. Okay.
Yeah, can you address what potential impacts the Biden administration's holding of drilling on federal land is impacting New Mexico right now?
Yeah, this executive order has a profound impact on New Mexico production, because over 50% of our of our natural gas, and over 60% of our oil comes from federal lands. So this is going to have a major impact on production. It, again, like Ronny just said, this will have a downward effect on our economies, our communities. I mean, think about it. The average worker in the oil field is making close to $100,000 a year or more. I mean, these jobs will not be backfilled by green energy. We have an environmentally safe production because of the technology, because of the willingness of our major producers, of the companies that are in this industry. And Ronny's right, the climate, the environment will be hampered if we are reliant on foreign oil. It will be more expensive to heat our homes. And this isn't just about starting the car every day. If we take away everything that is touched by a petroleum product, our day-to-day lives would change significantly. The plastics we use, the medical equipment, clothing, makeup. I mean, it's just incredible how much of the economy is touched by a petroleum product. But these executive orders are going to be detrimental to New Mexico, but to the nation.
I know that I'm sure for you, trying to twist arms with the other members of the congressional delegation, I'm sure that it probably hasn't been easy on this subject, has it?
No, it hasn't been easy, because what we're trying to explain is how important this is. We're going with a factual base. We know what these jobs are like. We know how this impacts our schools, our economies, our state budgets. And we are working on science as well. We do know our emissions are lower and our production rates are very much higher. But we can't get rid of an entire industry that supports not only this state but this nation in the way that the oil and gas industry does, and not have a backup plan. You can't throw out everything because we want to try to go all green. We've got to protect our interests here, and not only in New Mexico, but honestly nationally. And P can speak to the mining interests that they have in Minnesota under the same complexities in terms of overregulation and government heavy-handedness that we're seeing here. And again, a nation that depends clearly on minerals. And do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great segue. So in northern Minnesota, we have iron ore mining. We've mined iron ore up there safely for 135 years. The best water is in northern Minnesota. And 80% of this nation's steel happens because of the iron ore mined in northeastern Minnesota. And it just so happens there's the biggest copper nickel find now in northeastern Minnesota. It's called the Duluth Complex. And we've had one company attempting to permit to be able to mine that copper nickel. It's in its 19th year of permitting. And you know the windmills that many want? 6,000 pounds of copper in each one of those windmills. We want to mine it here in the United States, in northeastern Minnesota, with the best labor standards and the best environmental standards. And the cobalt for those battery-operated electric vehicles, we have 88% of the cobalt reserves in the Duluth complex. And we know we have a labor force that's ready, able, and willing to mine that. And so what we want to do is mine those minerals here, mine the oil and gas here, because for every barrel we buy from a foreign country, as Yvette said, it's not as clean, and it's not produced as clean as it is right here in our nation. because we demand the standards high, and as we all are environmentalists, we believe that we do it best and give the American worker the opportunity and the American miner and the American manufacturer the opportunity to produce those elements.
My question is for Congressman Herrell and actually all of you. The Biden administration has said that the oil and gas industry already has a backlog of permits, and that valid permits that, they're just not, accepting new ones. The ones that are in the pipeline, they're already being, basically that the oil and gas industry has a backlog of permits that can be used. What is your response to that, and how essential is it that new permits be,
Well, great question. First off, I'd like to invite the President of the United States down to Artesia, New Mexico, so he can learn firsthand what is happening. And it isn't just about the backlog. It takes years, sometimes 10 years and longer, to really get ready and prepared. The leases take place, and it could be 10 years before they're actually ready to do processing and permitting. But there are many permits that go through. In fact, the heavy-handed, the regulatory process that we have to go through in terms of an industry on federal lands is astronomical. We have put such a burden on them. So they need to understand that this moratorium, if you will, or this executive order to stop our leasing, it has a profound impact on the permitting, because this isn't something that happens overnight. It takes years to put these operations into place. And so you're compounding a problem now that it's going to exist 5 years down the road. This is already going to impact operations that are going to go into production in the next 18 or 19 months because of the time that it takes to get through the stacks of paperwork and the regulatory problems that come from government, quite frankly, and the heavy-handedness of government. So again, would love to see our President of the United States come to New Mexico, understand the industry, and understand how we can have such a good, solid, environmentally safe industry that puts people to work, puts money into our schools, puts money into our state budget, puts money not only into our industry and our, into our communities here, but nationally. The monies that are developed out of the Permian Basin go throughout the entire country. In fact, we just learned, I think it was $6 billion from one producer that is spent back in the state of Texas. It was $250 million in New York. I mean, monies that are produced right here in the Permian Basin are sent all over the nation for different local projects. And that's what I think a lot of people are not understanding when they're talking about turning everything green. Green energy will not do that. It has to be subsidized. It doesn't have the ability to employ the type of people that are employed currently in terms of numbers, and it will not be able to pay the kind of payroll that we're seeing in this particular industry, and there will not be a way to push money into the entire nation to help fund local projects.
Are you concerned? Sorry about that. Any concern, because I know that there's been talk of people, producers moving across the state line from New Mexico into Texas. Was any of that addressed today?
Well, certainly. I mean, when we have a governor that hasn't been excited about this industry and now hasn't done anything to protect our energy assets here in New Mexico, obviously, when you can go across the state line and do business in a much faster way in terms of permitting, they don't have the federal land issues that we have here, so it does move a lot quicker. It is concerning, and what we need to be doing is fighting to keep the jobs here, keep our communities fed in terms of the economy. I mean, everything in these rural communities every industry just about is touched by oil and gas.
I've got a question for the gentleman from Minnesota. Are you concerned about any mining operations in Minnesota possibly moving to Canada because of all the regs that are coming down?
Well, the fact of the matter is, the United States and our region, what we call the Iron Range, we have deposits of iron ore for many years. Couple of the iron ore mines have a shorter shelf life, but as those companies acquire land to be able to mine those minerals, and I just want to share with you something, that the Iron Range in northeastern Minnesota helped this country win World War II. We mined that iron ore that made the steel for all our defensive equipment, from the ships to the airplanes, etc. And we have a proud tradition of making sure that we mine it. We have a proud tradition of not only expanding our iron ore mining, but the copper nickel mining that we use in our everyday life, copper, nickel, platinum, gold, cobalt. These are minerals that we mine. And so our friends to the north, we are blessed in northeastern Minnesota to have that complex, God-given natural resources, and we want to make sure that we mine those safely and responsibly, and we do that. And so our friends to the north in Canada, they're going to mine the minerals that they are blessed with too. And for me, being parochial, I want the Minnesota miner and the manufacturer and the farmer and the small business man and woman to succeed. And so our goal is to make sure that the natural resources that we are blessed with in this entire nation, that we develop them more so than our neighbors.
One more question, Mr. Gaff.
I was going to primarily direct this to Congressman Stauber and Congresswoman Tenney. At least in New Mexico, our governor has written a letter to the Biden administration asking for us to get some credit for all of her environmental stuff that she's done from some of these executive orders and potentials. Have your governors, I know your governor's kind of busy right now, but have your governors jumped in on this side to try to negotiate or at least get some relief from the Biden administration to help what you're talking about with your mining and oil and gas?
Our governor has a moratorium on natural gas drilling. Only vertical natural gas drilling is allowed in New York State and in the western part of New York State. Although we have a lot of permitted wells, and the very first gas well drilled in the United States was in 1821 in Fredonia, New York, which isn't that far away from me, but nonetheless we're celebrating a 200th anniversary here. The governor is very... Wait for a second. Our governor is very preoccupied with the state budget right now, and he's also facing potential impeachment and resignation over other issues, his abuse of power and issues with nursing homes and people going to their untimely death there. So right now he has done really nothing to protect our industry. And interesting that my district, which includes Binghamton, New York, where IBM was founded, which once had almost 20,000 jobs in our community, now down to a couple hundred, has some of the richest shale, and we are not allowed to touch it. But we would, you just cross over the line into Pennsylvania, and they are doing responsible gas drilling there. So we'd like to have the opportunity to bring our jobs back, as we are a declining economy right now in my district. So the governor has done nothing in that way. He has invested a lot of money in so-called green energy programs. Unfortunately, through some of those deals he's made, which were really corporatist type of schemes, many people are in jail now serving time because of the pay-to-play scandals involving the green energy issues in New York State. So that's our green energy initiatives right now. I'm happy for an all-of-the-above approach, but you just cannot write off the importance of the oil and gas industry, and so many recognize it in our state, but unfortunately our leadership doesn't. Sorry for that long answer, but there's a lot in there.
I think that for me, we want our governor to, number one, open up the state of Minnesota. Our governor, it's been 1 year that he's demanded that he keep his emergency powers. We need to open up our economy, open up our schools, and we see the light at the end of the tunnel with Operation Warp Speed and the distribution of the vaccines. One of the things that we have to understand is, Claudia just mentioned it, it's about jobs in the economy. Let's use those resources that we are blessed to have in our respective districts and our respective states and employ our friends and neighbors to do that, and making sure that we stay energy independent and not depend on foreign adversarial nations that don't have our best interests at heart. We talk about critical minerals. Critical minerals, not only with oil and gas, but critical minerals that I mentioned, are part of our everyday life, are part of our manufacturing process. So we need, this COVID-19 has really shown the nation that we need to stop being dependent on foreign nations that don't have our best interests. And we can do that by mining the resources that we have to make sure that our manufacturing stays here and is brought back to our nation. We have such an opportunity in this nation to be not only energy independent, but I call it energy dominant and mining dominant, because we're blessed with these resources here in this great country that we all get to call home.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.